The History of Men, Volume 1, by Themoy Levi. The year of recording is 230 from the founding of the Axis, and the year 3100 from the founding of the Empire. The pre-imperial period. Under the directive of our Dragon King, I have been instructed to record the history of the Empire, its early myths, and bring them into reality. The origins of the Empire are long and storytellings, but most of those stories begin with the myths of the creation of mankind. Humanity, in the eyes of the dwarves and elves, are merely a pet project of their gods. The god of the dwarves being the first, and the god of the elves being the second. And the purpose of mankind to merely be a symbol of the long-lasting peace after the first Elder War between the two. However, the race of men hold a different story close to their hearts, and it all begins with their glorious emperor. Men believed that their production, their creation, was an act of destiny beyond any other god's control, including the Elder God. The Emperor existed before the formation of the world, and created man in his image, but seeked no credit, not yet, for he did not want to reveal himself to his children right away, but waited until they were ready. So in turn, men served under dragon and giant for such a time, worshipping them as gods until they fell in battle against one another. Now some say and dispute the existence of men during this period of time, but many men point to the man named Chagai Imgar, which was given the name the first Dragon Slayer. Now, to be fair, many claim that this man, this human, supposedly, was actually a half-giant, breeded with some elf spawn, and merely used his bow, his great bow, to take down the first dragon. But his descendants, in defense of man, are recorded in history. Narcissus Simon, the Bender of Rivers, Sosimo Domitis, Deathbringer, Itri, Mankiller, and Jakvovo Deepak, the Westward Sailor, are all recorded as men in historical accounts during this early period of time, and are not in dispute of being called men. Now, humanity at this time, during the fall of dragons and giants, could have possibly risen from the shadows of history. But the dwarves and elves tried to do what the dragons and giants could not, which would be ruling men. And mankind, being like a wise wolf, backed down to their elders for a time. And so in turn, the dwarves and elves ruled over men. Under the rule of dwarves and elves, they acted as pawns in their never-ending wars with one another, putting man against man for the greed of the dwarves and the pride of the elves. During the Second Elder War, men showed themselves exceptional. Men like Thanatos Alfred led men into the elven woods and slayed many an elves, just as much as any dwarf could have. Another man showed himself worthy, Patricus Prima, founder of the port city of Nargilo, laden elven fleets in hard raids against dwarven force along the eastern coastlines. Other such men that I cannot expand upon here are Kalman Medarot, slayer of kings, Misselbert Sergo, winner of coin, Oswine Cedar, builder of cities, Thandro Olchi, the hunter, and Salif al-Din, mender of ways. Now, as the Second Elder War came to an end, humanity's population began to multiply. This was mostly due to an exploits of a great woman by the name of Victory Majet, a human woman, wife of the dwarf tyrant Gilret Deepspawn, who made the rise of men possible. She spent her time cultivating the plains of the Northern Empire, teaching men how to plow and rotate crops properly, and under her protection, men's rise to power began. A rise in strength. As humanity grew in number, the dwarves and the elves began to make moves to suppress the rise of their younger siblings. The elves restricted the number of children humans could have, and up to 2, and tried to create policies of interbreeding to dilute the blood of men with half-elves, in hopes to lessen the cultural differences. The dwarves, however, sought a much simpler approach, increasing taxes on mankind and prioritizing resource extraction rather than developing human lands. Men, as of yet, could not strike against their masters, but their time would come. But until then, men would not stop speaking out against their overlords. Men like Demios Vakata, a horseman serving under the dwarf king Mortal Ironfall. While serving the dwarf king in many wars against his fellow dwarves, such as the Wars of the Ale Keg, he wrote a series of books on how men should make war. His most notable being, What is Honor in Men? A question he posed himself about what makes honor of mankind different from honor of the dwarves. He determined that while dwarves' honor focused much upon the acts of the dwarf, it focused little upon the character of the person. And he found that men do indeed care about these things, and that is what makes men honorable. It is their character shown through their actions. He defined these principles of integrity of what makes men honorable. All honorable men must shuck off their pride, for a nobleman lets his actions speak for themselves and does not need praise for his deed. A man must be courageous, for the difference between courage and foolishness lies in this. One is overcoming your fears and acting accordingly. The other is lacking them entirely. The next virtue is honesty. A true, honorable man who speaks the truth, even when it may hurt his cause, is in the right. For if he is true and is correct, the facts will plead to his innocence. An honorable man must never lack control over his feelings, or he will become a slave to those feelings. And finally, a good and honorable man must shuck off greed. Greed for his own time, greed for rest, greed for lust, and greed for others' things. If a man can attain these things, he will have achieved kintos, or sometimes translated as warrior's peace. Men who undertake this struggle are called knights, or those who struggle for peace. He wrote other books later in his life, such as A Knight's Struggle, The Rules of War, The Ways of Dwarfs and Men, and Why Humans Are Free. The Verge of Rebellion. After the War of the Keg, the dwarf kings further increased taxes upon men, and so began the time known as the Grumblings. The Grumblings are a series of books and speeches published by men such as Nogazai Moraine, Ulf Lumen, and Wildkind Hyginus that railed against their dwarven overlords. Nogazai Moraine was a former preacher of the first, turned radical, railed against the impious nature of dwarf kings by treating their brothers and sisters in faith so poorly. Often gathering large crowds to his speeches, he demanded reform in the church and to permit more humans into the clergy and to lower taxes upon the humbled masses. His gathering led to the burning of more than one church, and at the height of his influence, dwarf tax collectors were gathered up and executed, their bodies put on spikes outside the dwarven king's holds. Nogazai died mysteriously in his sleep at the age of 75, with no apparent cause of death. Many believe Nogazai died in an assassination sent by the dwarf kings. Nogazai's death led to the rise of the rebel called Ulf Lomen. Lomen, during his youth, served as a member of the guard of the town Blagde Hold, taking up the struggle and becoming a knight. Lomen showed himself to be a subpar knight, failing very poorly, being a prideful man and having a hard time letting go of the luxuries he enjoyed. However, Lomen was a soldier, but lacked a cause until Nogazai's death. Nogazai never visited the hold of Blagde, but Lomen did see an opportunity to fight for a worthy cause, gathering men and books that were close to Nogazai. Lomen began to recruit men in secret, gathering weapons and armors through his old connections with the guards of Blagde. Lomen, while not a perfect speaker, spoke the common man's tongue, speaking of unrest and uproar rather than reform. As Lomen gathered supplies and weapons, a man by the name of Wolfkind Hyginus was doing much of the same. Wolfkind Hyginus was a member of the clergy much like Nogazai, except he was different in the fact that he was also a designated knight and did not back down from a fight. Hyginus was a veteran of the War of the Aelkag and an experienced commander, and he wrote many books before the rebellion, stirring rebellion in the hearts of the rich and powerful. These books were the truth of rebellion, far more than gold, and his defining book, The Glory Belongs to Men, a book about the exploits of man and how they need not bow to their supposed elders in the dwarves and in the elves. These men and their actions in the rebellion will be covered in Volume 2 of the History of Men.